the one that I want to do now is, speaking of John Travolta,
White Man's Burden. Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, shows, and music from two people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson and Jeremy Scott.
This conversation is over.
I'm not the guy that you kill. I'm the guy that you buy. Are you so fucking blind you don't even see what I am? I'm the easiest part of your whole goddamn problem, and you're gonna kill me? Don't you know who I am? I'm a fixer. I'm a bag man. I do everything from shoplifting housewives to bent congressmen, and you're gonna kill me?
Oh, hello, everybody. Hello. This is Recotopia, episode 23. I'm Chris Atkinson.
And I'm Jeremy Scott.
Yeah, and acknowledging our beautiful people who are watching us live today on a Tuesday before this podcast actually comes out. See, chat got crazy, like not crazy, but like just like there was an immediate amount of messages when I went over to click on it. I was like, wow, everybody's already just like engaged in everything.
Bebopping and scatting all over us.
They are bebopping and scatting mostly. So, anyway, how's everything going?
You know, things are good because we're here to recommend some stuff.
Some stuff.
We got a big recommend today, Michael Clayton, George Clooney movie from, I believe, 2007. But we usually start off with some small recommends.
Some small recommends.
It's no big deal.
Itty bitty living space.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
Appetizers, the amuse-bouche of recommendations. I'm going to kick things off today by recommending another subreddit on Reddit that I have found that I enjoy.
Okay.
I have previously mentioned some subreddits here and in other podcasts that I enjoy, like Watch People Die Inside, Idiots in Cars, No, yes, no. But yesterday I found a new one that is just some really good eye bleach if you need something cute to look at. And it's the subreddit is r/TippyTaps, TippyTaps. So you would go to reddit.com/r/TippyTaps, and this is an entire subreddit of dogs and occasionally other animals doing that hyperactive things with their front paws when they're super excited, like if their owner's walking up the sidewalk, or somebody just said the word treats, or they just opened up a new toy, or their best friend came over I spent probably 30 minutes scrolling through TippyTaps, just watching videos and GIFs of adorably excited dogs. And maybe that's not your bag. It seems to me, the internet suggests to me that most people enjoy cute animals, especially dogs and cats. So you don't have to have, if you're unfamiliar, somebody on the chat says our zoomies is similar and just as good, because that's all, it's going to be all dogs doing the zoomies. There's even one for human TippyTaps. Anyway, if you are not familiar with Reddit, you don't have to have an account to go there and to view and browse the subreddits. And it calls itself the front page of the internet because you can quite literally find a subreddit for almost anything you could think of, which is why I've been on there for years and I'm still discovering things like TippyTaps.
Yeah.
So, I recommend number one for Jeremy.
All right.
Reddit,
okay.
TippyTaps.
Oh, yeah. I can see you wasting a lot. Well, not wasting. Maybe wasting is the right term. Wasting a lot of time reading on those things because that's the stuff, man. Pets getting all excited about stuff.
Yep.
I've been buying some of these Criterion that have the 4K transfers and everything, just to try them out and everything. I had a documentary I'd never heard of called For All Mankind that came out in 1989. It was one of them that was available. And this is yet another. Now, this is back in 1989. This is yet another found footage of NASA stuff from all the Apollo missions.
Oh, wow.
And it's not one cohesive, like, this is, we're following one mission throughout the whole thing. It's a whole bunch of Apollo missions, including, the Ron Howard and crew must have definitely watched some of this when they got to the Apollo 13 stuff, because there's some shots in there that from For All Mankind that look exactly like what they put in Apollo 13.
Oh, wow.
During some of the Apollo 13 stuff that they show in this. But yeah, a ton of Apollo missions in this, all the different ones that landed on the moon and all the little different things that astronauts noticed, a lot of voiceover on this as they're being interviewed and everything. One of the cool things was one of the astronauts talking about going over the Sahara Desert and noticing all these little fires that represented nomads around the region and everything. And you could just see, like, each one of these fires represents one person, and there's just tons of them everywhere and everything. So, like, really cool things that astronauts observed, and some fun things, a lot of minutia and whatever, but it's fascinating. Anytime you can get footage of this type of stuff, I find it fascinating. So For All Mankind, there is an Apple TV show that has come out that has this name. I believe I think it's had like 3 seasons, and I think a new season just recently came up, so that's going to be confusing. But this is a 1989 Criterion. Well, it's not. I don't know if it's not Criterion originally, but it's on a Criterion disc. It might be on the Criterion channel for all I know. But well worth taking a look if you're into the space program and things like that.
Yeah, I agree with the commenter, Nolan, who says Apollo 11 was fantastic. So I'll have to check this out.
Absolutely. Apollo 11, another great little companion piece to this.
Yeah, that would be a good double feature. We should just start double featuring everything.
Everything, yes.
I recommend a new Mountain Dew flavor. You double feature that with some kind of snack.
Yeah, exactly.
I do see the question here about the new video game Stray, which I was just telling Chris about yesterday. Playing as a cat. And that will be a future recommend. I am downloading it today. I have yet to play it, and I've got a busy day today, but I'm sure I'm going to love it. I've seen way too many videos. I probably watched more videos about that than any other game before buying it. I'm just a little obsessed with this game. All right, my second small recommend. I was on the fence, honestly, as I was watching this film for the first time. And I've decided that I like it. I've seen it 2 times now, but only in the last 3 or 4 months. And this is Michael Bay's Pain and Gain.
Oh, yeah. It does
Mark
take
Wahlberg.
more than one viewing, by the way.
It does, because this is based on a true story. The movie delights in pausing every now and then during crazy-ass things and reminding you this is still a true story. These people are terrible. There's almost no one in this movie to like. Ed Harris, maybe. But everyone is terrible. The victims, the perpetrators, the next set of victims. It's just a movie full of really bad people. And that did not make me feel good the first time I was watching it. To know that this was a true story, and are we glamorizing? But they are so dumb. They are so dumb. And they play it extremely well.
Yeah.
And by the end, I'm so charmed by these dumb, terrible people that I believe I can say I enjoy the movie, even though I don't like any of the people in it. Basically, what you have here, if you're not familiar with this movie, is some guys in a gym, some like trainers, workout helper guys. Because they're stupid and they want the American dream, they decide to take this wealthy guy who works out at their gym and kidnap him and force him to sign over his fortune to them through a series of torture attempts. And things don't go exactly the way they want, so they try to kill him. emphasis on the word try.
Yes.
Because despite all that they do to him, he does not die. He did not die. And then they set their sights on, I think, some sort of a porn type mogul and his wife.
Yep.
Those people are not quite so fortunate. You might feel dirty after you watch this. That was my conflict. I felt dirty even while I was laughing. And then when I went back through it a second time, I was able to sort of remind myself, based on a true story is just that. Based on a true story. It does not mean everything I'm seeing really happened. This is certainly a fictionalized version of that. And so on my second viewing, I almost straight enjoyed it without feeling too dirty at all.
Yeah.
And it moves up. It moves up instantly. I'm not a huge Michael Bay fan. I've always said, like, The Island is probably my favorite Michael Bay movie. But this moves right up there, up to the top 3, I think. Just because it's so out there. It's not like the stuff Michael Bay usually makes. I mean, there are action sequences and plenty of stuff like that. But anyway, I was dirty, and then I enjoyed it, and that probably could go for many things. But my second small recommend is Pain and Gain.
I don't remember the exact line, but it made me laugh so hard. And it was when Anthony Mackie is listening to Mark Wahlberg spill out the plan or whatever. And it gets to his narration, and Anthony Mackie's like, I don't think he knew what the fuck he was saying or believed anything that he was saying, but I knew I had to follow him or some crap like that. Like, it was just like, it was something like that where it was just completely like, flipped it on its ear what he was saying. But yeah, that movie's fun. That movie's a lot of fun. I think Michael Bay is a lot better when he's not making these giant action pictures because when he makes these kind of, I don't know, there's something about the dumbness that really works with Michael Bay movies. Yeah. So
I got a special personal chuckle out of, because The Rock's character professes to be a born-again Christian the whole movie and raises objections to doing these things because he doesn't want to go to hell. But there's a scene where they go into this, I think it's a gun shop, but there's a scene where they go into the store, and because of the music of Stryper, a Christian heavy metal band, he is able to connect with the worker behind the counter. It's like, I love Stryper. I listened to a lot of Stryper growing up, so I thought that was extra funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, what have you got for us for your second small
second one is another 4K Criterion that came out. It's called, and this is an all-timer, Double Indemnity. Billy Wilder movie from 1944. Starring Fred McMurray, Barbara Stanwyck, and Edward G. Robinson. It's such a simple setup, but it's just this is just a classic in every sense of the term, because of the plotting is something that you're going to be very familiar with because so many movies have done this kind of thing over the years. But there's something about it, the dialogue that's in it, the way the people who are supposedly the antagonists, who are really the protagonists when you think about it later on, figure out a lot of the things that happen in this movie. They're not dumb. They're not, nobody's dumb in this movie. But for those of you who haven't seen it, it's about Fred McMurray is an insurance salesman who is trying to track down this guy about some automobile insurance. The guy isn't at home, but his wife, played by Barbara Stanwyck, is. And there's suddenly discussion about accident insurance. And Fred McMurray instantly gets suspicious about this because she wants to get accident insurance without her husband knowing and all this stuff. But then he falls in love with her, and he starts to want to hatch up a plan where they kill the husband and get the insurance money. The double indemnity in this case is if he were to somehow die on a train, you get double the money. Like if you die in some unusual spot is basically what it is. You get double the money, so therefore he gets some money too out of all this. but he's trying to do this under the nose of his friend and boss, Edward G. Robinson, who at this point was a big major star, but was on the was waning at this point. He just plays this boss who's like real hard ass about investigating everything. Now the insurance company in this, there is an executive in this movie that plays one of the insurance guys. Once all this stuff is in motion, he's still trying to find a way not to pay this, even though like everything is like looks pretty on the level and everything. So let's not give the insurance companies too much of a protagonist label in this. But anyway, the whole movie is told through Fred McMurray as he gets on this like recorder thing, and he starts talking. He's basically giving his confession all the way through, and he's narrating it, and it's a good kind of narration. It's really informative narration, not like I walked into the door and then she greeted me or whatever, like that type of thing. But Double Indemnity is a really good movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Jeremy.
I have not. It goes on the list of shame immediately because it sounds like very much my jam. It's weird, the movies that you get exposed to, the classic films that you get exposed to versus the ones that you don't. This one just missed me. But
I think you will highly, highly enjoy this if you get your hands on it. So yeah, anyway, great movie. I think this is typically in top 20, top 30 lists of all time. Routinely gets in those lists. So apparently too, Billy Wilder and Raymond Chandler wrote this together, and they hated each other. They were adapting somebody else's book, and they hated each other, and Raymond Chandler nearly walked out on the production. The studio had to give him a bunch of concessions to come back. So anyway, it's amazing how that movie still got made with those two hating each other writing the script. So anyway.
All right. Good stuff.
On to the big recommend.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
One of my favorite things about this show is revisiting a film I haven't seen in several years for the purpose of Recotopia, because I always see things that I haven't seen before. I always notice little subtle nods or themes. Michael Clayton stars George Clooney, and it co-stars Tom Wilkinson and Tilda Swinton and Sidney Pollack. For the most part, those are your key players. George Clooney is basically a fixer for this law firm. He is an attorney, but for reasons that are kind of vague,
a little bit,
he's basically been stuck in this role as the firm's fixer, probably because he's really good at it, and he has a lot of connections. And you open with him basically playing poker, and then he leaves a poker match. They say, "Good to see you back." So there's some hints that maybe he's had a gambling issue. And a lawyer from the firm calls him and says, "I got this big client. He's one of my biggest clients. He just hit a guy with his car. He's freaking out. I'm in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
Can you go help this guy?" I love this scene because this guy goes from 100% entitled to like accepting the fate of his situation, all because Clooney very calmly, very sternly lays it out for him. But when he first gets there, this guy's like, he thinks he's not going to get in any trouble at all.
Right.
And there's this moment where Clooney's like, "You've led the scene of an accident. There's no options here."
Yeah.
Right now, the police are scraping paint off of the car. If that guy got to look at your license plate, he'll be here even sooner. The phone starts ringing, and the guy's like, "Is that the police?" And Clooney's like, "No, they don't call."
Yeah.
I love everything about that scene because he is fixing in the sense that he's taking care of the situation, but the guy was expecting fixing meant make it go away, like the wolf in Pulp Fiction. There's just so much to unpack here. He's really good friends with Tom Wilkinson, but Tom Wilkinson is manic depressive. And we're led to believe he has gone off his meds multiple times in the past, and that he and Clooney had a deal that if he wanted to go off his meds, that's fine, but he had to call Clooney and tell him first. And he has not done that. And at a deposition for this client, North, that's who Tilda Swinton works for. North, I think you could just assume is like Johnson & Johnson.
Or Monsanto maybe, or one of those kind of,
huge agricultural conglomerate that has bought up all these other businesses. So he's at a deposition because there's a lawsuit about one of their leaks it's very Aaron Brockovich-y in that part of it, and I don't mean to belittle that. And he starts taking his clothes off in the deposition and ranting. He rants a lot. Actually, the movie opens with him ranting.
Yep.
I think over the phone. And you're supposed to realize, this he's pretty out there, but you learn about halfway through the movie, he's kind of right. He does have manic depressive episodes, and he does spout some ridiculous stuff, but he has discovered that North knew their chemical was carcinogenic, and because of his manic depression and his going off the meds, you can't get anyone to believe him. He's also, unfortunately, developing a romance with one of the witnesses in this case, who is a young woman. This is a very complicated character, Tom Wilkinson. And I think in the end, I end up feeling sorry for him more than anything else. So Clooney has to go out there and retrieve him and then fix this mess and try and figure out what's going on with Arthur. One of the biggest sins in the entire movie, we're not sinning it, we're just talking about it, but one of the biggest issues I have is that Clooney that night puts himself in adjoining hotel rooms on the first floor with a sliding door balcony where Arthur just walks out sometime in the middle of the night or in the morning. He's just gone. Clooney literally has to break down the door between the two rooms to get in there. Basically, what follows here is kind of a political, dangerous game. Tilda Swinton discovers documents that were in Tom Wilkinson's possession that show that he knew about the carcinogens and the chemicals. So she hires hitmen in one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie. I love the duality of her. When we're introduced to her, it's cut back and forth between her rehearsing an interview and the actual interview. And we see her say lines a bunch of different times to try and get the right inflection and the right wording. And, you know, when Jim brought me in here, when Jim brought me in 2010, she's so exacting about what she wants to put forward. But then when she calls the hitmen, it's like she's never had a conversation with a person in her life.
Yeah.
There's no preparation for that. There's no rehearsal. She's like, I don't know how this works. The hitmen bug the apartment. Eventually, they kill Tom Wilkinson in what is one of the creepiest scenes, I think,
it
in
really
all
is.
of film, because it's so quiet and they're so meticulous, and they're like surgeons in how they go about that particular act. Like they've done it dozens and dozens of times. And so then the rest of the film is, will Clooney make it out of this? Will he be the next one that they go after with the hitmen? He's desperate for money to save his bar, and he has a bunch of debt. So he's asking the firm for money. They misunderstand this as a blackmail attempt. And it all ends in this amazing scene where he faces off with Tilda Swinton and says that famous line, "I am not the guy you kill. You could have bought me off like that. You don't even know who you're dealing with here." It's all being recorded because his brother-in-law is a cop, and that's all set up perfectly. You don't feel like that's an ex machina cheat at all. I love this movie. This viewing only gave me more appreciation. Everything about it. The writing is tight. The performances are... Everyone's great. I think Wilkinson is the standout. But yeah, I just loved it. What's your impression? How many times do you think you've seen this?
This is probably my third time watching this. I watched this last year at some point, and then I watched it when I was living in New York. I watched it when it came out. That scene at the end is the true centerpiece. Of course, there's a lot of great stuff that leads up to that. Not only is it just like, him showing up and surprising her as she goes into this room and she thinks everything's over and she's won and all that. But, after he goes through that whole spiel about, give me $10 million and then like, no, okay, give me $5 million for this and $5 million for that and all that. And then she finally agrees to it. And then he goes, you're so fucked. and because his character at this point, you're not quite sure where his morality is. He's kind of on the edge of it where he doesn't really care that this company may have done some bad things or whatever. Even when he's got the proof that they've done bad things, he's not really in the business of like being a crusader of any sort. And we do know that he's got money problems. And so when he does that negotiation, you're like, oh, well, you're thinking maybe this is his way out that he's discovered or whatever at the end. And then when he says, you're so fucked, it's like another turn in this whole thing.
Yeah. And I think he does that. I think it's because they killed his friend, right? It's not, he's not necessarily a moral crusader against the law firm or Unorth. It's that you fucking killed my friend, man. And you tried to kill me. Like they blew up his car. Had there not been some fucking random wild horses on a misty hilltop, Clooney's dead before this movie's even over, which I think is sort of obviously what puts him over the top, but that it sends him into almost like this fugue state where he's like, I'm on borrowed time now, man. I'm not going to fuck around anymore.
Yeah.
I am Shiva, the god of death.
And Abina also talks about Arthur's walking around here somewhere when George Clooney shows up at the end. There's just that. This is one of those movies where it's an interesting narrative, right? It's not. Clooney is kind of like Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive in some ways, where he's not interested in the mystery that's going on really at first. And it's only through trying to find somebody that he ends up finding stuff that is like, oh, this is really bad. And he's, it is an interesting dynamic with him at his firm too, where they say something like he's been there for 14 years and he's been passed over for.
He's not a partner yet.
Yeah, he's not a partner yet and everything. And he tells Sidney Pollack like, hey, I'm good at this. I'm a good trial lawyer and everything. And he's like, yeah, but you're way better at this. And like, you get the sense that they benefit more from him being the fixer. And that's the reason why they don't ever want to put him in as partner, because who are they going to get to be as good a fixer as he is? And that must make them more money somehow or more prestige or something out of all this. Tom Wilkinson in this one, you after your first viewing, you might leave going, boy, that was just a crazy performance or whatever. But I like this because think about someone who's dedicated their lives to screwing other people and then finding out that what you've been doing is really based in a lie. Like there's no more gray area anymore. You find a document that says you knew what you were doing to the environment and these people and you signed off on it, and you're still trying to sue, like, you're trying to like defend yourselves against all these people who have a rightful complaint against your product and everything. And I'm sure, and we don't know whether it's a true moral thing that Tom Wilkinson's going through, or if it's because he just fell in love with this girl that he suddenly, we don't really know that, do we? Does it say? Like, I feel like it's because he's fallen in love with her that he decided to go deeper into this.
I think so, yes.
So it's not, even he is not really like just because he's a good person or anything has decided to change this over and everything. It's a really bad thing for a lawyer, by the way, to do. I mean, what he's doing is unethical in every sense of the word. It may be morally righteous, but you lawyers cannot do that. They can't just suddenly say, all right, well, I'm going to build a case against the firm, I'm going to build a case against the company, my client, instead of helping them out and everything. So it's a complex issue, right? Like watching that movie, you're going, oh yeah, he's doing the right thing. He's not actually, he's not doing the right thing, but for a movie, it's an outstanding sort of like moral, heel turn basically. But
I think one of the things I noticed this time that I don't think I paid much attention to before is perspective, right? Because Clooney, there's that scene where he goes to pick up his son and his formerly drunk brother shows up and tries to wave at him, and Clooney's like, get in the car, don't look at him. He speaks about the guy with such disdain, like I'm the good son and he's the bad son. And yet Clooney doesn't see his own gambling problems, massive debt, unethical job. He doesn't see any of that as fuck ups the way he sees his brother. And maybe he just doesn't look inward enough until we get closer to the end of the film. Maybe that's sort of his journey. But I always thought, I saw somebody comment about the brother kind of being forgotten. I agree. I always thought it was weird that there's basically this one scene with the formerly drunk brother, and then that we never come back to that. There's no there's no denouement for that relationship. Maybe there is on the cutting room floor. But I always thought it was interesting that he just shows up and disappears. But I think maybe that's to show you how Clooney views himself compared to other fuck-ups in the world around.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Tilda Swinton thing. Like, just it immediately puts you in this position to hate her, I guess, for some reason, because she is sitting there like practicing her answers and they cut it back and forth and everything. A lot of times in these movies, this is sort of a character build in the positive, because you're like, oh, this person's prepared or whatever. But in the way they do it here, Tony Gilroy like puts it back and forth, and like, we know this company is not doing the right stuff almost immediately. That she's sitting there like getting these calculated answers that people just swallow. Basically, they just say, all right, okay, that, you're a good company, you're fine. Yeah. Is kind of a scary thing. But I love Tom Wilkinson in this. That him being in that state throughout the whole movie, just kind of like, he doesn't know what to do. I mean, he has no idea. He's screwed basically. Like there's no way out of this really. He can't even do the right thing. That's what's so crazy. Like it's even if he does the right thing, it's never going to be admitted what he's going to do.
He has this conversation with Clooney in an alley when Clooney spots him. And I wanted to add that the paper sack full of 16 French baguettes is one of my favorite props.
So funny.
In all of movie history. But in that conversation, Clooney's like, I know you called Anna. And he's like, how could you know that? How could you know that? Nobody could know that. And he realizes he's being bugged. And so then later we see him, he cranks up the music and he gets out his diatribe, and he's like, all right, is everybody in the house? Here we go. And he starts basically laying out the evidence because he knows he's being bugged. I love that scene. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you exactly what you think I'm going to give you. He steals this movie from me. It's such a complex character.
It really is. I do wonder about the plan of the hitmen, though, to put a cell phone operated bomb in Clooney's car, and they have to follow him around and all that. That's one of the things that I'm not sure I totally get about this. Like, they have this perfect way of getting Tom Wilkinson. Yeah. But like in this other one, they're like, well, this won't be suspicious at all. We'll blow up one of the lawyers of this firm.
Cars blow up on the countryside all the time.
Right. So like it works out for the movie, obviously, because, Clooney finds out that he is being targeted at that moment. And luckily he found those horses on the hillside to stop his car and come out and like admire them. Could not, by the way, this movie came out afterwards, but I could not help but think of Fantastic Mr. Fox during that scene.
Oh, wow.
Because there's you remember when they're like towards the end of the movie, they're on the road and they hail that fox.
Yes.
And he's like trying to say all this stuff and and the fox doesn't, or is it a wolf? It's not a fox, it's a wolf. Or a coyote, one of those things. But they're trying to talk to he's like trying to get news or something from them, and like, and then he speaks French to them, and then there's no response, but at the end they both like raise their arms in solidarity at each other at the end. What sort of reminds me of that, but that's one of those things that, if we were sending the movie, it's like, wow, thank God there's some horses that are so amazing that, Clooney has to stop on the side of the road and go up to them and admire them like he's in Red Dead Redemption or some shit.
I do love, though, after that explosion, how fast his instincts kick in as a fixer. And he's like, okay, I gotta make it look like I died in that explosion. He runs and throws his wallet in the car and then runs off into the woods. And I don't think I would have the presence of mind to do anything but stand there and look at the explosion and go, well, shit.
Yeah.
And, what are they going to do? I agree with you. It is an overly complicated way to try and kill him. But I think Tony Gilroy was hooked on that horse imagery. And that quiet moment for Clooney to kind of reflect, and I'm willing to forgive. Obviously, if we were nitpicking the film, that would be another thing to nitpick. But yeah, I just love this movie too much to care. But yeah, they kill one guy perfectly with drugs, and the next guy, let's do this like we're in a Batman comic.
Yeah, let's do this thing where we can't even really figure out where he is because we're in the middle of some, cell tower, dead zone of some sort. And like, this is a thing that Clooney was doing a lot in this era, right? Like Up in the Air comes out not too long after this. Where he is good at a job, but he is slowly coming to the realization that he hates being good at this job. And I know this was a movie that you were considering being the one that we would watch last week. I think that's interesting that in both movies he's got this career, he's got this career crossroads going during this whole thing. But yeah, this movie is really, really good. And IMDb, I think, has this over 8. So that's usually the real good indication of how others have received it. I don't think it did very well in theaters. Like, I don't think it was a huge hit of any sort, but yeah, this is a really well-made movie. It's just so solid all the way through.
It made $93 million on a budget of $21 million.
Is that worldwide, 93?
It's whatever Wikipedia decides to calculate, so that's probably domestic. I don't know why I ever trust Wikipedia. Why am I even here, Wikipedia?
Why?
I do think it's interesting that in like 1984, 93 million would be the biggest movie of all time. But in 2007, it's like, oh, most people didn't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Domestic it made 49.
Okay,
and
so that was
worldwide 92. So it was like a middle range hit, I guess. It had some steam, but not much. Anyway, this is a great movie with great performances and hardly anything bad really to say about it.
Yes, and if you like this movie, Tony Gilroy, as a writer and a director, more as a writer, has an incredible
yes, he does.
filmography. Dolores Claiborne, Devil's Advocate, Proof of Life, but then you get the Bourne series, Michael Clayton, State of Play, Nightcrawler, Rogue One.
Well, and then his brother directed Nightcrawler. It's was it Dan Gilroy? I can't remember if that's
Yep.
So yeah, both of them highly talented, make great movies. So
All right. Well, why don't you hit us with the surprise double feature for Michael Clayton?
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
okay, so this one isn't tough, but it's tough to come up with. Here's my answer. Like, there's a lot of answers, right? So, I think the obvious one is The Firm. I'm not going to say The Firm. But I think The Firm is the most obvious one. Not only the fact that Sidney Pollack directed that film, but
nice.
It's got all that, where somebody comes in and they don't know anything bad is going on. And then they find out and they seem powerless to actually prevent it. And there's a lot there's the scene where he goes in to talk to Gene Triplehorn and he turns up all the volume in the house because he knows it's being bugged. And there's a fixer in that. Wilford Brimley plays the fixer in that. And it's just a lot of like parallels to The Firm in this. And I'm sure to many, many movies in this. But what I wanted to do was kind of a Law and Order kind of thing here, where in the background of this movie there's a courtroom drama going on in this movie that we never see at all. And so I figured, now this movie is not of the same caliber and it's a little bit more obscure, but A Civil Action was a movie that I thought of as a double feature for Michael Clayton. Because it has the same kind of, there were a lot of these movies back in this day where something's poisoning the water and there's a courtroom case. Aaron Brockovich was one of those movies. The Rainmaker was more about insurance, I think, but it has a lot of these type of movies where a big company is doing bad things and trying to get away with it. But A Civil Action was one. Sidney Pollack is also in this movie, by the way. But it has, John Travolta is the main guy, and he's as the trailer says, you're one of 3 lawyers. They're 500 or whatever, or something like that. So they're going up against a big company in this. And there's a lot of, of this thriller intrigue type of stuff going on. So I figured A Civil Action would be a good one to combine with this, sort of as the alternate side of what's going on.
This is Duvall's in this, and I think William H. Macy is in this. And
William H. Macy is in this.
One of the things I remember, I haven't seen it in ages, is that
I haven't either. The
big law firm, one of their legal strategies is to just outlast the small law firm, because I remember there's a point in there where the law firm, Travolta's law firm, has to like lay people off, and then they're working out of somebody's apartment, and they're eating leftover pizza, and basically they've lost all their money because they have now committed wholeheartedly to their client's cause. I like this pick. I haven't seen this movie in ages, but I do remember liking it.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it's only got like a 6.6 on the IMDb, but I remember really liking it. Steven Zalian, who's best known for writing Schindler's List, directed this movie. And John Travolta is at his peak post Pulp Fiction, like starting to get a little like full of himself and in performances and everything. Kind of John Travolta, because he's getting a little over the top. In this movie, but it's still good. I remember liking it quite a bit. So
all right.
Anyway, yeah.
Now we have homework to give out.
Homework to give out, and I have. Oh man, that would have been. This is a perfect segue if I change my movie midstream here. See, I'm going to save one because I'm going to save this one because I have already small recommended it, and I will save that for a later time.
Okay.
The one that I want to do now is, speaking of John Travolta,
White Man's Burden.
No, seriously, it's White Man's Burden.
Oh
no. The Brian De Palma movie called Blowout is what I want to do next. Brian, this movie is this is a treat for a lot of you who have not seen. I don't know if this is streaming. I didn't look at this because I did change midstream. I was thinking about this movie, but I went and changed it to something when we were doing prep.
Yeah.
And I was like, that'll be perfect because that's just a good movie. But Blowout, I want to do Blowout.
Blowout is a movie I only watched because you raved about it. I love me some De Palma, but I hadn't seen that one until you recommended it enough, and I loved it. I'm looking right here. It's on something called Pluto TV.
Okay,
it's
I've
on
heard of this.
Tubi, Tubi.
Oh, Tubi's free.
It's on Roku channel if you have a premium subscription, and it's on Amazon Prime if you have a premium subscription, and it's available for rent for $3.99 at all the usual spots.
This is well worth your time, folks. Blowout's great. It's a mystery. John Travolta plays a guy who's just trying to get sounds for a production, and while he's getting these ambient sounds, he picks up the sound of a car crash that is a part of a big, huge conspiracy, and he spends time, being obsessed with getting this sound perfect and everything, kind of like the conversation earlier on, which, I don't mean to take away your double feature immediately if that's the one that ends up being, but kind of like that. But anyway, great movie. Can't wait to see what you guys think of it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And it looks like it is free with ads on Tubi, so
okay.
Hopefully y'all can check that out. We got some time for a couple of questions here.
Question.
I got something to say. I want the truth.
I'm listening.
Let's start with, who are some of your favorite best friends of main characters?
Okay. I kind of like the dynamic that Dante and Randall have in Clerks. I think it's pretty real. Like Randall's kind of like in that first Clerks, he's kind of an annoying character. He doesn't seem to care about much, but he really cares about Dante and everything, and how they he's trying to get him to. He's trying to make him happy all the way through this whole thing, but it may not be in the best way because he's Randall or whatever. And then Clerks 2 has that great moment when they're in prison and they're expressing their love for each other and everything. It's really, really, I think it's a great dynamic. I really like it.
Yeah.
So.
I'm going to give you two answers. One that's kind of connected to yours. Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting.
Yes.
If only for that speech at the end. Which I think conveys true, affection and love for Matt Damon's character. And I'm going to cheat and go with a TV show. If you ever watched House with Hugh Laurie, Robert Sean Leonard played another doctor in that hospital who was House's best friend. I loved this character because he was basically the only person in House's life who would tell him the straight shit. Everybody else was intimidated by House, or he could walk all over them in a conversation. But Robert Sean Leonard multiple times just stood right up to him and said, "No, you're being wrong here." I loved that relationship over the course of the whole series. That's a little bit.
Well, and classically, that was Sherlock Holmes and Watson, essentially, during the way they patterned it and everything. So,
yep. And we got some answers here with Ricky Bobby's friend. I don't think he counts because he married Ricky Bobby's wife. Harold and Kumar, the characters in Blind Spotting. Those are some good answers.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Also, somebody asked, where do I go to ask a question for this podcast? There are several places you can do that. On the Cinemasins subreddit, there's a weekly thread for podcast questions. You can leave a comment there. Or if you go to our Discord, there's a channel specifically for podcast questions. Those are probably the two best ways to submit a question to us. You can also just tweet at me if you want, and I keep a running list. All right, as projectionists or viewers, when did you see your first cigarette burn, and did someone else have to point it out to you?
I am pretty sure now. I don't remember the Epiphany day that I knew of this. I feel like I was watching movies and I noticed them, but I didn't know what they were. And then maybe it was when I started building movies and I started noticing that it was right around the part where you cut. That's where I was like, oh, okay. So those were marks for the end of the reel. And now I didn't really know the history of them whatsoever at the time. Fight Club, of course, famously called them cigarette burns. And I guess that's in some way true. The technical term was changeover cue. It's basically the first mark was to tell the projectionist, start your second projector, because they used to change reels and with two projectors, and they would start that second projector. And when the next dot came up, they would close the dowser of the first projector and open the dowser of the second one, and it would put out the next image. But they kept them there. I guess there was still, when I was working, I guess there were still a few that still did reel changes. Not many, but yeah, I remember it had to have been in that early time, and I don't remember who told me about them or anything. I don't remember that. So.
I didn't, of course, go to a ton of movies until I got to college, and I started working for a theater pretty quick after I got to college. The chain that I worked for had an 8-week training program that at the time seemed like a mountain I would never climb. They had me in box office for 2 weeks, then they had me in concession for 2 weeks. This is working as regular workers. Then they had me in the booth for 2 weeks, and then they had me acting manager.
When you started, they put you up in the booth.
Yes, they had me. I did 2 weeks in concession, box, booth, and the office.
Or was it all just training?
It was all training. I'm sorry, it was all training.
Okay. So they didn't just throw you into the movie theater and start
that would be
you to start
irresponsible. The goal, as I was told, was that your employees will respect you more if they've seen you spend a couple weeks doing the menial jobs of selling tickets and scooping popcorn. I don't know if that's true. Anyway, this theater, it's the Paramount Theater in Kankakee, Illinois. It's still there. Has a huge, old, at this point, maybe 80, 90-year-old auditorium. They've modernized it with these fancy reclining seats that we have everywhere now. But when I was there, it was a near 1,000-seat theater with sloped seating. And up in the booth, they still had 2 windows, and they still had the pedals for the changeover from one projector to the other. And the old guy who trained me, first of all, there was a cot up there that he said sometimes he slept in. There was a freaking doorless bathroom so the projectionist could pee. But he told me the whole history of how the cigarette burn would show up on the screen. And just like you said, you would start the other projector here. And, of course, at this point, they had removed the second projector and replaced that with the platter system. But I always felt like that was a little bit of a special experience to be able to be trained in that auditorium, in that booth that had such history.
Definitely.
All right. I think we got time for at least one more. You sometimes hear people talk about movies they wish they could go back and watch again for the first time. What movie would you like to go back and watch again for the second time? And they suggest something like The Sixth Sense.
You mean watch it for the... Okay, so I may have misunderstood this question. Right. They're asking us what we'd like to come back and see the second time?
Yeah, the gist I get is that like watching The Sixth Sense, you're blown away, but then the second time you watch it, you get to appreciate and notice all the little touches he did to make that twist authentic.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm still going to have the same answer for this because The Usual Suspects is the answer that I have. Like, when you watch it, you're trying to guess who Kaiser Sose is the whole time. And then of course there's that awesome and famous reveal at this point, but you may not have remembered all the things that Kevin Spacey does during that whole build up to that. There's a whole scene that I just completely blanked out of my head where Agent Kuyan is telling him, like, here's what I think happened, blah, 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 tells him all this stuff. And you can see Verbal smiling like this guy isn't getting it at all. And then as soon as Agent Kuyan comes into the picture and like is looking down at him again, he wipes that smile off his face so that he doesn't notice that he's smirking at him. So there's a lot of things in The Usual Suspects where they build that up to that surprise, and it is fun watching it the second time after that. So
that's
anyway.
a good call. Good call. Mine is simply my favorite movie ever, The Matrix. The first time I ever watched it, I had that blown away experience. And then the second time, it's not that there are any twists that need to be set up in the build-up, but the second viewing allowed me to understand the details about what was happening. The first time through, I was just kind of in a river going with the current. And the second time through, I was able to appreciate some of the themes and some of the symbolism and the whole world building that they did in that movie. I think we should go ahead and answer this one last question we were prepped for. I do want to shout out a couple of these answers that people shared for that question. Parasite, that's a good one. Prestige, that's another good one.
The Prestige is great.
Dark Knight, Inception, a lot of Nolan on here.
Yeah.
Psycho.
I mean, Nolan movies kind of demand that, right? Like once it's revealed everything by the end, and you want to see how if it holds up on that second one. So.
All right, what are some movie foods you'd most like to eat? Not goofy things like the overly large sundae in Bill and Ted, but actual realistic food you've seen in movies.
The Cuban sandwiches in Chef, I wanted to eat so much. I was so hungry after watching that movie. I wanted to tear into those Cuban sandwiches.
That scene in the beginning when he comes in and cooks all this new stuff. That whole scene makes me salivate. Everything he makes in that scene is delicious. But yeah, those sandwiches, that's a good answer. I have two answers for you. The Ramdan from Parasite, which
looks amazing.
Accidentally talking about Parasite a lot today. And yeah, I have made my own Ramdan, but not with $100 Wagyu ribeye because that's not easy to come by, and that's not a good use of my money. But I would still love to eat that. And then the cookies that Maggie Gyllenhaal makes in Stranger Than Fiction. Because it's not implied that she's magic or anything, but it's implied that those cookies are some of the best things that Will Ferrell has ever eaten. And I like foods that when I eat it, I'm like, this is one of the best things I've ever eaten. So I want to get at those cookies.
Yes.
Soylent Green, nice. The grilled cheese in Chef. I agree with this.
Absolutely.
The one he makes for his kids. Spirited Away food that turns the parents into pigs. I don't know about that. The steak and eggs from Twister. Actually, that's no joke, because steak and eggs on a farm like that, cooked by a woman who's lived on a farm like that, will taste incredible.
JC says the pizza and Top Secret. Yeah, of course. That cheese just goes for miles. Like there's never. Yeah, and then the apple strudel from Inglourious Bastards. Absolutely,
Ratatouille.
Not complete without the cream.
I'll tell you this: they opened a Ratatouille themed part of the park in Epcot, and they don't sell Ratatouille, and that is like one of the biggest marketing fails. I realize it's maybe a dish that people would only order once, but I would feel like everybody would order it at least once. That's the featured dish. You made a whole land about this movie, and that doesn't make any sense to me.
I know. Makes no sense. Although I'm looking forward to the thing from Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Raccacoonie. That's what I want to see. So,
still need to see that movie.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you guys for listening to us and watching us live out there and contributing your answers to us and everying. Makes the show a lot better, I think.
Your homework for next week
we
is
appreciate
Blowout with John Travolta. You can find for free on Tubi. And we'll see the live audience next Tuesday, and we'll see you listening audience next Monday. And y'all take care.
Yeah. Yeah. See ya. Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the Cinemasins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or Cinemasins Twitter at Cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to Recotopia at cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
All by myself. I was all by myself in the room, even though Chris was there. He's not here. He's not really here. He's not really here. Oh, shit. We are on the Googles now.
Yes, on the Googles.
I like doing German accents. I don't know why.
I don't either.
Like I'll tell my wife, I'm going to get the coffees instead of I'm going to get the coffees. I don't know why. I just do weird shit like that.
I think my dad used to kind of do stuff like that too. My dad used to be like, "Come and see here."
And this should be the last show that I ever use this microphone setup for.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I got all that stuff that they're gonna set me up with the fanciness.
The fanciness.
I'm gonna be one of those people like you that has like a microphone arm and an actual mic. I'm gonna put mine up here so I can like pull it down.
That'll be very sweet.
In the radio station.
That'll be the thing.
That'll be the shit. That'll be the poo. Missy's the poo.
Yes.
That's for all of you Bring It On fans out there.
God, I haven't seen that since it came out.
Really? That's crazy. Have you seen any of the shitty sequels?
I haven't seen any of them.
Oh man, one's got Hayden Panettiere in it.
Oh yeah.
They're not good. But Bring It On is charming enough. Oh man, I like things and stuff.
Things and stuff are the best.
Stuff and things. I saw when I got home last night that Twitter thread of the McDonald's and Dairy Queen signs fighting in Missouri, and like there's other businesses that got involved, like
Really?
Bank got involved, and then Wendy's jumped in. It's pretty hilarious. It's not even like a very big town. It's just one place started a sign war, and everybody decided, well, I'm just bored enough that we're going to do this.
After all the other problems in the world have been solved, let's do this.